Oh, sweet relationship between these two mercurial signs. I'm a Gemini, and I have a lot of really close Virgo friends. And I love this relationship. It is so awesome. This relationship between Gemini and Virgo is such a beautifully complementary, very the uniting of two perspectives that are very compatible but very different as well. And they do have their challenges coming together, but once an effort is made on both people's part to understand each other and understand the other person's thought process, it all makes sense. It all works out, and beautifully so. God, thinking about it, I have a lot of Virgo friends, like really close Virgo friends, and of course, because when you have these two mercurial signs of Gemini and Virgo, they both are very smart. Even if Mercury is in a different placement. Say Mercury is not in Gemini or Virgo for these people. They intuitively understand each other on a very intellectual basis. Now the Gemini might be a little bit too airy fairy in the air, basically. For the Virgo is very practical and down to earth, which can be a little frustrating sometimes with the Gemini who likes to just spin ideas and wander the cosmos intellectually and abstractly. But ultimately, both signs are very analytical. They're very logical. Again, they're both ruled by the same planet here. So they're both, even if the manifestation is slightly different, the element of air, much more logical. No, they're both logical, but air is much more intellectual, like in the head, mental. Uh, um, Thinking of ideas all the time and being very random and hard to pin down. And Earth is very practical, very technical, very what you see is what you get. That's the perspective of Earth, is the tangible reality of form of you know what you can feel, what you can pick up. And so we have these two very different perspectives of life. But again, fantastically complementary, fantastically, because where should I go from here? My Gemini mind. Um, there's just an intuitive understanding between these two signs, between these two people, that is magical, truly. There's a appreciation of each other's perspective that's just inherent. The Virgo, even though they don't necessarily understand exactly where the Gemini is coming from and saying, which is totally fine. Most people don't. That's just how Gemini is. It's very quick, very, you know. And so sometimes Virgo's like, what on earth are you, thinking or whatever. And sometimes the Gemini is like, oh my God, Virgo, why are you being so nitpicky? Oh my goodness. Um, or Virgo, why are you so focused on this? We should be focusing on everything. So basically, if the Gemini is too scattered, or if the Virgo is too critical, that's really the only challenge here. The biggest challenge, really, is if Gemini can ground, and that's really beautiful. Trust me, coming from a Gemini perspective, it's really beautiful to learn how to ground yourself as an air sign, and especially Gemini, the most frenetic sign of them all. And Virgo is a beautiful example of that because Virgo is smart, very intellectual, just like Gemini, but is grounded. They know how to make use of that intellect, to make use of that very, the fast neuron firings in your brain. And so Virgo can teach Gemini how to be more practical, to be like, listen, yes, you're very smart, but you don't have a job or you don't know how to use it. I will teach you this. I will help you ground all of that and make it practical. Make the mind work for you, instead of working for the mind. The challenge for Gemini is to get caught up in the mind and not know how to bring about change in the earth sphere, you know, to get caught in the mental plane, so be thinking all the time, have all these wonderful ideas, but never do anything about them. This is the challenge for Gemini. And with time, it gets easier, just as every challenge does, and we rise to the highest reward of those challenges. So Virgo is wonderful in teaching that to Gemini. It's a beautiful, beautiful gift. And again, if these two signs just stick through that initial, there can be an initial rubbing the wrong way between these two signs, especially if you're not conscious of being a Gemini and conscious of being a Virgo. The cool thing is both of these signs are very intuitively interested in understanding perspectives. Now Virgo is more interested in a cool, detached kind of way, like I wonder what makes them tick, you know, which is interesting because, you know, usually cool and detached is air. But, you know, Earth is just as much able to be cool and detached. And of course, Gemini is interested in getting as many different perspectives and ideas and conversations as possible in life. And so when you have these two signs that are inherently interested in perspective, and they have so much to offer each other, you just got to get over that initial obstacle of basically the Virgo person not trusting the Gemini person, feeling like they're intangible, like even though the Gemini person's there and they're saying all these wonderful things and ideas and everything, the Virgo needs to feel like they can reach out and grab them, you know, and not hold them down. Like, that's very important, you know, for Earth and air. Earth not to try and capture air and hold them down, because air will just sift through the Earth very easily. That's how air works. It's impossible to capture an air person, you know, air energy. So, but if it is important, being air, to be reliable, to be tangible, to be, you know, to be there, to be dependable. And especially to an Earth person, and especially to a Virgo. So it's very important for the Gemini to learn some consistency, to learn to although both signs are interested in perspectives, Gemini is a bit more geared toward this, a bit more geared towards understanding somebody where they're coming from. And so it's important with the Gemini individual to learn how the Virgo thinks, why they think, you know, what they think about, and then understand where they're coming from. Because very often Virgo says something very analytical, and even Gemini doesn't quite know where it's coming from, and so Gemini just takes it as they're just being negative, I'm gone. It's, if you both, as a Virgo and a Gemini, if you both feel that it's worth it to know each other, if you have that vibe from the beginning, you know, you just feel like, I would like to know that person, even though I don't quite understand them, and even though we might even butt heads sometimes with our logical analyses, with our differing perspectives. Then persevere, learn the other person's habits, their behaviors, and don't take things so personally. That's something I've had to learn too, as the Gemini in this side of this relationship. It's to not take things so personally with the Virgo, to just laugh it off. You know, I mean, ultimately Virgo is hardest on themselves more than anyone, and a lot of people, especially those not even so much interested, but not knowledgeable in astrology, they take everything that Virgo says, not everything, but the potential is there. Without awareness, the potential is there to take what Virgo says to heart, when sometimes, you know, it just needs to be, it's just criticism that needs to be brushed off, because the Virgo's just having a tough day, or just, they're going through something, and it's hard for them to keep that filter, and so they're just analyzing to death, you know. Once the Gemini individual learns to get to the highest of air form and just detach, to be like, wow, they said something really mean, whatever. You know, it's we'll talk about it another time, or I know where this is coming from, I don't need to make a big deal about this, it's you know, whatever. If that happens, then I think you'll find, as the Gemini, if something, you know, the Virgo person said does bother you, that you can go and talk to them at another time, and you can say, hey, listen, that hurt my feelings. And for me, 9 times out of 10, in fact, I can't think of a time where it didn't work out this way. The Virgo's like, I know, I'm sorry, I knew I was being too critical, I just was, So overall, if the Gemini can learn to deal with the negativity perceived in Virgo's analyses, then beautiful. And if the Gemini, and not every Virgo, has, well, I mean, it is that Earth perspective of what is this lacking. So that's there in some form or another energetically. And again, if the Gemini can learn to be grounded and be dependable, and not just be, an air sign that is just constantly moving and impossible to have a hold on, a healthy hold. It's okay to have attachments, just don't get overwhelmed by them and submerged in them. And of course, I mean, it's very important that neither of these signs try and control each other, try and perfect each other. It's very easy from the Gemini perspective to be like, you're really smart, but you always focus on, details, on things that don't matter too much. And of course, the Gemini could have a very superficial judgment of what does matter and what doesn't matter. And so they can kind of skate over things that are important that the Virgo is very fixated on and very focused on. Now, that being said, it also could be true that the Virgo is focusing on something that doesn't matter too much. That is a detail that's too important. For example, if the Virgo gives a concert, piano recital or something, and they mess up on one note and they're just like brooding on that for days, like, I'm not perfect, it's not perfect. Then sometimes that Gemini levity of analysis can be like, dude, come on now. You played like a 2,000 notes, that one note does not matter. So it can be helpful for sure. But again, these are all just challenges, things to think about, things to work on, and incorporate as things flow, as things go. Just, again, things to learn. Fly! And that brings me to one of the best parts of this beautiful... Well, I should finish my last thought. Again, when you have these two extremely logical signs, very analytical, it can get... The challenge is for both of them to not think that they know everything, to not think that their analysis is the only one that matters, to not think that... Where? Fly, come on. To not think that... Well, yeah, to not think that their perspective is the only one, and that the other person should conform to that perspective. Now, the beautiful thing is, when you have Virgo and Gemini, both are mutable signs. They're both, again, mercurial signs, so they're interested in learning how people function in some form or the other, whether it's understanding for whatever their reasons, and they do have slightly different reasons, Gemini and Virgo, and just different manifestations of their energies. But ultimately, both of these signs are really great at, once they get past the whole thinking all the time, the logical, must analyze everything, once you rise to the top of that, and again, it's just life, it's just challenges, it's just obstacles and opportunities to grow. That's it. Once you have both signs honoring other people's viewpoints as well, then beautiful. And then you get to one of the best parts of this relationship is just the beautiful complementary analysis. I go see Teresa, who I've done a couple of videos with every week, and we have Sun square Sun, so Sun in Gemini, Sun in Virgo, and Mercury's Virgo, Gemini square. And before I go into that, square relationships there is tension, but it's deeply rewarding. And again, this is everything I've said before. The tension just comes in the form of being very similar and having things to offer each other, but going about life in a completely different, not complete, well, you could say complete, how to put it, in a slightly different way. Again, both Gemini and Virgo are very smart, very analytical, but it manifests simply in a different way, in different planes, the intellectual air and the very practical earth. And so once you get over those differences, it's deeply rewarding. Squares are excellent. They propel us forward. They get us to think about things in a completely different light. And that's what's so awesome about this relationship, is when I go see Teresa every week, we'll do tarot readings, astrology, we'll just talk, about anything. And our perspectives always, like, we get each other intuitively, what each other is saying, which is incredible because we're both talking so damn fast, we have so much to communicate. But we get what each other's saying, and then we go off in a slightly different way, in a slightly different tangent. They're very deeply rewarding for both of us, She'll say something and it'll spark something for me, and I'll say it, and we'll just go off in completely different directions. And vice versa, I'll say something and she'll say something. It's just like, whoa. It's a deeply rewarding relationship once you get over the challenges of just learning how to harmonize those two very different perspectives. I mean, you're dealing with very logical, very analytical signs that are interested in growing and learning. I do. And what's so beautiful is they have the tools and the motivation to do so. And so you have these two inherently logical, very intelligent people. I mean, being ruled by Mercury, they're into communicating, they're into thinking, they're into understanding and growing. Mercurial energy just wants to understand everything, and it's an endless pursuit. You can never know enough, And another one of my Virgo friends who has the same thing between me and Teresa, Sun in Virgo square Sun, Mercury in Virgo square Mercury. We do the same thing, tarot and astrology, and I'll have to do a video with her one day because she's awesome. But my friend Sam, we're always, it's so cool because our relationship is always growing because we're always thinking and communicating and just learning from each other. And we have, again, we're very complementary, being that we're from the same planet, Both of us have Gemini, both of us have that mercurial energy. But we express it in different ways, and we have different perspectives. And even if I do, a reading for myself, I love to get her or Teresa, their perspective, because it's so enlightening. I constantly find myself just deep in thought after something that they remark, and it's always about something I never noticed before, and that I wouldn't have noticed because I just don't have that perspective. I'm not Virgo with Sun in Virgo or Mercury in Virgo, or just again in general with my other friends who are Sun in Virgo but Mercury Leo or Mercury Libra. Either way, their perspectives, we naturally just harmonize. And so I think that's the beautiful thing about this relationship is there's so much naturally working in this relationship. And Virgo and Gemini, if they just can get over that initial obstacle, that initial hump of learning to appreciate, even if they don't necessarily agree with the other perspective, learning how to appreciate, then everything is beautiful, and you're looking at a very, very amazing relationship, and one that will continue to interest both individuals, because both are so interested in growth and knowledge and accumulating knowledge and just understanding as much as possible. And again, there's something natural in the energies for both of these people to appreciate different viewpoints and perspectives. Even Virgo, who gets the rap for being critical all the time, Virgo loves to get another perspective. It's really helpful. It's very healing for Virgo. And, if you're the Virgo, you might feel like, well, I don't know about that. But let's face it, sometimes Virgo can get so trapped in their own thinking that a thoughtful remark from somebody else of a different perspective is so helpful. And it gets you to thinking, maybe this little detail that I was blowing up in my mind isn't such a big deal. Maybe they're right. That's interesting. I should think about that. I should analyze that. And so, in every single Virgo friendship I have, it's always started out beautifully, you know. There's that initial obstacle is very easy to overcome with a little bit of awareness. Just a little bit. That's all you need. It's just knowing I'm a Gemini or I'm a Virgo and so and so's a Gemini, they're a Virgo, whatever. Just knowing a little bit, it can go such a long way. And there's, again, that beautiful natural curiosity that both individuals have, and when they come together, it's just augmented infinitely, truly. So, yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Namaste.